Welcome back to Crypto Fitness. I got a juicy one for you today. Today I'm interviewing Brandon Davis, aka Rags to Riches, on his latest project with Crypto Heartbeat. It's called Texan Token. Let's just start from the top. So like give me a brief rundown of Texan Token. And for those of you who don't know, this is Brandon, aka Rags to Riches. He's are you a co-founder, right, of Texan Token?
Yeah, man, co-founder. Now, you know what I got to do, man, just out of respect for your show.
What's up?
I got to do it.
Oh,
now, wait a minute.
The glasses.
It don't stop there, bud.
All right. Yes, I love it. Yeah, taking out the true Texan in you.
Dude, you got to, man. I bought this hat, full disclosure, about 84 hours ago, guys. So breaking it in. Good. So,
are you in Texas, by the way?
No. Matt's been in Texas for 20 years. I'm actually in Virginia myself.
Nice. All right. Good. But you got to channel the inner Texan in you, you know?
Hey, you know what? I still got the twang a little bit. I consider myself from the South. I'm not too far north in Virginia, not up in the DC area. So
let's jump into Texan Token. I'm actually pretty excited about it. For those who don't know what Texan Token is, give us a brief rundown and just bird's eye view at what it is.
Yeah, good question. So Texan Token is the first endowment contract on the blockchain, and we're actually launching exclusively on Pulse Chain. And some people might ask, what's an endowment? The endowment in the traditional sense is kind of like a legal structure that within that legal structure, there's something called a perpetuity. And basically what you do is put money in there. And with that money, you were able to maybe invest that money in the traditional world and then kind of take some of that yield to pay for the operating costs of your organization. A lot of times that's nonprofits. Sometimes it's schools. You hear about endowments at schools all the time. They got hundreds of millions of dollars locked up, donations, and they keep it locked up and just kind of run operations off of that yield. So that's the general idea. Now, why are we saying actual endowments? Why are we talking about operating costs and cash and all that? Well, what we're doing is we are partnering with existing communities that have 100,000 members or more. And these are people that are outside of cryptocurrency. Okay, so these are nonprofits. And what we're doing is we realize the power of the blockchain. We realize that in a very small amount of people, I like to say this a lot too. It's like, imagine your favorite football stadium. And within that football stadium, you're one of those people sitting up I know you always get the tickets way at the top because you're a broke pleb, but me too. By the way, I'm always at the top too.
Oh yeah.
So, I'm always up there and say what?
You always got to get those cheapo tickets,
Dude, I like seeing the field. That's my excuse. All right.
Exactly.
I like seeing the whole thing. So
we all can't be Richard Hart. Okay.
No, he owns the stadium. So
yeah, exactly.
But if you're a person in that stadium and you're like looking around, you're like, wow, that's a lot of people in one place. But then what if you could see a little bubble that pops on top of everybody's head and shows how much money they have access to? Well, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you in that stadium of 50 to 100,000 people, guess what? We have one of those stadiums. It's called the Hex staking class.
Mm-hmm.
So we know how much can be locked up at any given time. It could be $2 billion to $10 billion to $20 billion with 50 to 100,000 people. Now think about that in terms of all these communities out there that are operating with the traditional fundraising sense, right? Mm-hmm. You set up some auto payment, you give somebody, if you give whoever, it's late night TV and you see some puppy crying and you're paying them $20 a month for the rest of your life on auto pay. Well, imagine if we could take that and we could take that community, we could take that financial energy and put it on the blockchain. So this is what we are doing. And people say they're accusing this of being a promise coin. I'm here to tell you, there ain't nothing promise about it. All right. This is something that we have partnered with the Texas Nationalist Movement, who is a nonprofit organization that is focused on Texas sovereignty and independence. And we have partnered with them to provide the Texan token at no cost to all of their members. At the last count, they had about 436,000 people. And part of this partnership will be kind of releasing this immutable, no admin key, awesome smart contract into the world and have them use that for adoption and have them use that for potentially fundraising purposes. But I'm not putting words in their mouth. That's on them. That's essentially what's happening here with Texan Token.
And so basically you're going to, correct me if I'm wrong, it's anybody that can donate crypto or fiat currency will get this valueless coin, right? At the beginning, valueless coin. Are you guys trying to kind of target those people that are kind of in the like the traditional legacy type fiat system and trying to bring them over into the crypto space and give them a coin that may or may not have value?
Well, yeah, exactly. So people, like I said, people do not understand the power of tokenizing existing communities is probably the most powerful concept that I have run through my brain since I've been in cryptocurrency. And I don't see anybody doing this at a high level.
Sure.
I've heard bits and pieces of people doing it here and there, but I think that we've got the right partner for this. We've got the community for this. We are going to run kind of a donation period of about 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
So people who donate to the Texas Nationalist Movement will receive 10,000 points per dollar that they donate. And through that, they will be airdropped no value tokens. These will be zero value tokens at some point in the future when Pulse Chain launches. Just kind of as a thank you, just like you would go to a fancy dinner and your meal's paid for, or you get a bag or a t-shirt. It's going to be very similar like that. Yeah.
Cool. You kind of touched on this quite a bit, but my next question was like, how did you guys come up with this idea? Like, what's the ethos behind the token? What does it stand for? And you answered kind of a lot of that, but where did you guys originally get this idea of like trying to tokenize communities? And specifically, why did you guys choose the Texas, what's it called again? The Texas National Movement?
Yeah, Texas Nationalist Movement. So
yeah,
a lot of credit goes to Matt. Okay. So Matt, Crypto Heartbeat, Matt Frazier is his name. He's been in the nonprofit space for 20 or 25 years now. Back when the internet was pretty new, I think he's about 29 years old. He founded a company that worked with nonprofits to leverage the power of the internet to raise money.
Okay.
So he created that company. He grew that company very, very large. And he ended up, I think, selling that company, getting out of that company. Matt heard Richard talking about the Sins Foundation. And then for Matt,
the wheels start turning right there.
Yeah. So Matt just took the baton and he started running after that. He was able to get in at the beginning of the internet and take advantage of that. Now he's getting in at the beginning of the blockchain. So, and he's taking advantage of that as well. So Matt is very familiar with the space, and it just seems so logical and so smart to tailor what we're doing here with our communities on the blockchain, being able to tailor that in a really strong way to existing communities of thousands and hundreds of thousands of nonprofits across the country and across the world.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, I think it's different than just, a lot of these other scam coins you see out there are just valueless. There's not really a whole lot of value add, but this seems like there's actually like real world utility, regardless of how the Texas National Foundation, regardless of how they use the money. It seems like they have the right ethos that's kind of aligned with like crypto as a whole. I mean, crypto represents, like, at least in my opinion, represents sovereignty, freedom, that, the ability to remove middlemen and transact peer-to-peer, send, money through the space and time in an instant. Right. And,
yes.
This kind of fits that narrative and ethos as a whole. So, and that's why I was like originally interested in it. And when you guys originally released and I saw the video of you and Matt, it resonated a lot. And specifically, I mean, I live in Texas now. I moved here a couple months ago. I'm in Austin. So, I mean, it was just like perfect. So I thought it was awesome. Matt? I have not. Actually, okay. I did not formally. I did a video not that long ago, got quite a bit of traction, and he commented on that video, and but nothing came about it.
Oh yeah, well we should set that meeting up, dude. You guys, I mean, You're too close not to have met, bro.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I've only been here for a couple months too, so that, I mean,
Okay,
that's
cool.
that
Yeah.
in his defense. But so let's go through some of the tokenomics of like how does Texan Token work? I mean, give me some of the numbers. How does is there staking? Like, let's go through some of the features of it.
Cool. All right. So let's just hit the important stuff here, right? We have a security audit. We paid $33,000 or $35,000 for the damn thing.
Yeah, I heard they're expensive.
It's good. It's important, right? Because we actually do value people's money, but at the same time, it's like, whoo, that's a lot of money.
Sure.
So independently audited, we passed the audit. Okay. And the neat thing is, if you go to our website, texan.cc, you can click the button at the very front. I believe it's either a red button or a white button. And it says security audit. Click that and you can read the entire report. You can even see some of the issues that they found. You can see that we resolved them, and it's very, very thorough. So check that out. It is an immutable contract, and there are no admin keys. So thank you, Richard, for kind of instilling those basics in us, because let's be real here. Most of us had no clue before we met Richard what all this stuff was.
For sure.
Right. Or how to
100%.
do it the right way.
Yep.
Token allocation. We have 100 trillion tokens. Now, here's the interesting thing about this contract. 97% of those tokens are locked in a contract and the keys are thrown away forever. Okay. 97%. 3% of those tokens are going to be circulating. Out of those 3% of those tokens, on one side, you have T&M. Okay. So they're going to get a portion of those tokens. On the other side, you have our team, which is going to get a portion of those tokens. And then in the middle, you have all the donors. All the folks who donated are going to get those tokens. Now, one really, really cool pumpamental about this is the fact that both the T&M side and our side, we have to stake our tokens for 22 years.
Oh, dang, I did not know that.
No. This is actually something that nobody knows except on your channel right now.
That's badass.
Yeah. So the neat thing is we have a very, very small circulating supply. Now, you might ask, well, what's up with this whole 97% of this supply that's locked up? Like, what's the deal with that? When you go and buy Texan and you go to stake your Texan, what happens? The contract looks at, let's say you want to stake it for 15 years, and we have a 22-year max stake length. And
I was going to ask you, we can get to this in a second. I was going to ask you why you guys chose 22, but continue your train of thought.
So let's say you stake for 22 years. The contract looks at that stake and it burns, or you can also think about it as reserving that 22 years of principal and that 22 years of yield. It burns it out. Okay. So the neat thing is, at some point, when you think about it that way, there's going to be a point when there is no yield left for anybody to quote unquote take, because it will be burned out of supply. It shrinks from day one with all of these people that are staking.
Okay.
That's a really, so you can think about this 97% as a giant credit and debit account. As people stake, it pulls it out. As people restake, it puts it back in.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I'm following
a little bit.
Yeah, I'm following.
Okay. Now, here's another part. It's deflationary. So how is this deflationary? You and I have seen it tons and tons and tons. People early in stake all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
With some contracts, when people early in stake, and I want to make mention of this. Our token and Hex, they are different. Hex is a Rolls Royce. The stuff that Hex does is amazing. We are much more simple, and that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just apples and oranges here.
Sure. What
our contract does, when there is an early in stake, we burn 100% of those fees. Nobody gets them.
Damn.
OA doesn't get them. It's not distributed to stakers. It's burned. So it technically benefits everybody in terms of price appreciation.
So, but how does that work with, like, if somebody, because I know if somebody serves at least 50% of their stake, right? Yeah. It depends. Like, so how does it work if somebody serves 50% of their stake and then, like, let's say they serve like 61% or 60%, right? How, because they still get some of their, like, I believe 50% of their principal back. Is that right?
Yes, they get 50% of their principal, and then the interest will be pro rata. So it'll be from that 50% mark on.
Okay.
So they will lose anything under 50% is essentially lost with 50% of your principal. After that, the interest is lost pro rata based on that 50% mark moving forward.
The cool thing about this is you have a lot of similarities to Hex, and that's why I thought this was really interesting, because you took a lot of the core fundamental pieces of the great things about Hex, and you kind of just made them your own and you expanded on them. And then the whole deflationary thing is really awesome too, because the rarer the supply of coin, the steeper, price. It's built for price action too.
One of the things that I like about Hex so much is that early in-stake period, early in-stake penalty.
Mm-hmm.
I think personally that, human beings operate on pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
If something feels good, people keep doing it. If something feels bad, they're not going to do it. So when you attach that pain point to ending stake, then what happens? People don't want to do that as much. And I think that should be in every crypto, man.
Yeah.
I think
agree.
that would make things much more stable. Can you imagine if that was attached to Bitcoin somehow?
Oh yeah.
That'd
be nuts.
Crazy.
You'd have trillionaires these days because nobody would ever sell.
Exactly, man. So we took some of that. We don't have a T-share system. T-shares are simulated compound interest in the Hex contract.
Mm-hmm.
What we did instead, we have a very basic mathematical equation that happens when you either scrape, which you get to scrape your interest yearly. You can keep your principal in there, scrape your interest. But we have a very simple mathematical formula that happens one time at the end, one function. You click the button, it calculates, and it doesn't have to recurse back through days like Hex does. So what's the significance of that? Gas fees will be super, super, super low with this. All right. So we made the math very simple. The contract is very simple. There's not even many lines of code. But that's also a really, really cool feature. And it's not that it's better than Hex. It's just that Hex has to do different things.
Yeah.
It has to calculate different things that we don't have to. But for good reasons as well for Hex. So that's kind of what that looks like.
So as far as the max length stake goes, was it just you wanted to be different from Hex and the whole 5 thing? You wanted to kind of do your own like why 22? Like what's the significance of that?
Yeah, good question. So we needed it to be over 20 years. And that's because when you're talking the language of people who aren't in crypto, and they have endowments with their organizations, they're used to 20-year time horizons with those legal structures. So in order to kind of talk that same language, that's why we push that out to 22 years.
Okay, that makes sense. As far as the yield goes, how did you guys calculate the base rate yield is 5% and then the max rate is 87%? They seem kind of like arbitrary numbers. I mean, at least from the surface. So like, how'd you guys calculate those numbers?
What we wanted to do, we wanted to have a base rate of 5% that could be scraped yearly if need be to create some sort of cash flow, right? Mm-hmm. Cash flow for the house, cash flow for the business, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we don't have a bigger pays better bonus with this. All this is, it's very simple. Longer pays better. So if you're holding on top of that 5%, what you're going to do at the very beginning, and there are some charts on Texan.cc to check this out, it's going to give you a multiplier every year. The longer that you hold, the more the multiplier that you receive. So by the end of 22 years, you're getting on average about 236% per year at the end of that period. But at the beginning, you're getting a small amount.
Right.
So the average after that 22-year period ends up being about 87% per year if you actually hold that long.
Okay, I see. And does that differ if you scrape every single year versus if you just hold on to it for the entire 22?
Yeah, that's a good question. It does differ. And here's, again, our tokenomics and pumpamentals are such that we want to incentivize people to hold on. So what happens if you scrape? It's going to set your interest ticker back to day one. Okay. So if you had served 5 years, you can scrape the total amount of that accumulated interest without having to sell. Okay. And then you can take that and run with it, but your interest ticker is going to be set back to day one. And the system's going to recalculate how much interest that you took out of that 97%. And now that's going to be burned out of the supply.
That would basically subtract however many years you took up front to like the tail end of your I guess your stake.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to make as big of gains because you scrape some off the top, and so it might only be like 15 years of interest versus the 22, right? Because you scrape some. Yeah.
Exactly. You got it. Yep.
That's crazy, man. This is going to create some really, really interesting game theory and laddering theory, I think,
Scraping
as well.
ladders.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, yeah. So that was one of the videos that I made on Hex, basically showing how you can turn $100 into like some $2 million with
Sure.
what I call a Hex ladder snowball. And it's just the basic idea was just you just do a ladder on a more frequent basis, on a monthly basis, versus just like doing it every year.
Sure.
That video actually blew up quite. It has like 113,000 views, but I feel like something like this with like this scraping aspect to it really creates a different dynamic. I also did a version of it with Hedron, like you can do some cool things with Hedron, but this is really different because you never really have to like restake your principal. You can just leave it there, and just like the whole premise behind the snowballing ladder was you're trading your risk for options. You're not getting longer pays better and bigger pays better. You're still staking out for 15 years, but you're just spreading it out over the course of, the whole 15 years. And you can kind of take some of the risk off the table. You can take profits every single year. And that was kind of the basic theory behind why I was pushing for like, do it on a monthly basis, because I'm not getting the full 5, but at least I have some longer stakes, and then I also can take some risk off the table during bear runs and during bull runs. And I still think it's a great strategy, but this is interesting because this allows you to not have any penalties really for scraping off the top if you need to.
It also encourages longer stakes, because what you could do, you could stake for a year, take that interest and try to restake it and try to game the system and make compounding. But that's not going to work, because we made the multipliers in such a way that if you hold, you will beat ending stake every year and then restaking the interest and comp. So we thought about that too and built that into the contract.
Well, and that's interesting because the reason I made that video for Hex specifically was because you're just basically trading some gains, and it might be significant gains, but you're just trading that for the ability to maneuver in the marketplace. But this, I feel like you don't need to do that for that exact reason, because you can scrape it off the top and there's no.
Imagine this. Imagine being able to use Texan, have a big chunk of money, and you scrape every year or every 2 years, and you move it over to Hex and make 5, 5, 5, 5, 6.
Oh yeah. And that's the other interesting game theory is the entire ecosystem, moving it through, to Hex, staking it there, making yield there. Obviously with PulseX as well, there's going to be single side staking, and then the Pulse chain, you're going to have, staking with validators. It's like to me, this is like what true DeFi is, man.
Yes.
Like this is like true DeFi, and being able to like spread out, assets between different types of assets in the same area and make yield off all of them. It's going to be absolutely savage.
And some of the detractors say, well, you're trying to one up Hex. That's not the case here. We are trying to create another yield bearing asset in the RH ecosystem that will work symbiotically with Hex. And not only that, we can take all hexagons off the table here. We're not milking hexagons for support, because what we're trying to bring to the table is 435,000 members.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I am not naive, and I'm not the guy who's going to say, 435,000, they're coming. What if only 10% come, which is much more reasonable? 40,000 people?
That's a great value add to the Richard Hart ecosystem.
Right.
I completely agree with you. So one question I have about that, though, is for these people that are donating fiat, right? Maybe they haven't been exposed to crypto at all. They don't have wallets. Like how are you guys going to allocate the Texan tokens to people who donate with fiat?
Yes. All you have to do is provide an Ethereum wallet. All right. So the education side with T&M and us, that's up to us to kind of provide that basic information.
Sure.
And then just the basic security that goes along with that. So those will be a series of videos and people being able to come into the Telegram. We have a strong group of people in the Telegram right now that are ready 24/7 to answer any questions. We're actually on shifts just to make sure we don't miss anybody. Nobody falls through the cracks.
What comes with that territory, obviously, is just the educational side of things. It's obviously going to be a very big value add when you have like a token that could potentially change lives financially, but also you have the education, and it's parallel with the ethos of crypto, and like not your keys, not your coins, right? Self-sovereignty, taking middlemen out. And so by educating people on like what the real ethos of cryptocurrency is, and it's still aligned with their same values because they're donating to something that has those same values. It's like, I feel like that's like the perfect bridge to bring people over. And yeah, the hard part is just the technological barrier to entry. That's going to be the hardest part for a lot of people. But once you get past that, man, it's going to be it's going to be awesome.
I think it's going to be a long burn in terms of onboarding. It's going to be a very solid foundation because people aren't going to understand it at first. They're going to start learning it and they're going to get involved. They're going to get involved. They're going to get involved more and more and more. And then that word's going to spread organically through those people and those networks. And it's a really, really, really cool experiment that we're about to go through here. I'm very excited.
One other question I wanted to ask, maybe just explaining the interest again, because if it's not inflationary, right? Yeah. We understand like Hex, like you're basically minting the inflation, just the same way like a miner in Bitcoin or Ethereum would. Because this is deflationary and you have 100% of tokens burn out of after an EES, how can this sustain paying out yield for 22 years? Like where is the additional yield coming from? Do you know what I'm saying?
That's cool. So in order to overcome that problem, what we built into the contract is when you stake, it reserves it for you. Okay. So there will never be a problem where somebody who has staked runs out of the ability to be able to grab that yield, because the system says, okay, here it is. We're going to burn it out of the system. But when you mint it back, it's yours. It's your name on it, yours alone. Right. Mm-hmm. So what happens when we get a lot of adoption potentially here, right? Maybe not, hopefully so.
Right. Yeah.
People are going to be staking their Texan, and the size of that OA, of those coins in that OA, starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until at one point there is no more Texan token to get yield from, because there is no more ability to stake, because there is nothing in that credit debit account. At that point, you can kind of think about Bitcoin, how it inflates. It inflates to a certain point, and it becomes more and more and more valuable over time as it gets more and more and more scarce.
When supply becomes scarce and goes down, the price does this.
Yes. And also as price continues to increase, that's also a form of scarcity as well, because it pushes some players out of the market as well. So that's a pumpamental that we are really looking forward to seeing how it plays out. Yeah,
man, this is exciting. And I think that the fact that you guys have an immutable code, so it's just between you and the contract, I think that's a big plus as well. And then one question I did have before we run out of time here, I read the audit, and there was one part on page 13 of token distribution, and maybe we kind of covered this, but maybe I just had a hard time reading the audit there. But it says the tokens are originally sent to the contract creator at mint. However, the difference in the amount of tokens held by the origin address and the amount of tokens outside can cause issues with creating a new stake by calling the function start stake. And so it said recommendation. It is recommended that the team creates a distribution schedule for the tokens, so that the number of tokens held within the origin address and the tokens that are held by users are within the framework of the staking process.
You know what, man? That's pretty interesting. I know that our developers had taken a look at that. There are some. Here's what's really cool actually about building a project. Here's what's cool. Yeah. Some of the stuff that you see, some of the reasons that Richard did X, Y, or Z, you're like, oh my gosh, that's why he did that. Yeah. That's why he did this. That's why he did that. And you come to these little mini epiphanies as you go down this road.
For sure.
You can't really talk about that part in detail.
All right.
However, obviously it's in this, we know about it, and we're prepared for it, and nothing weird is going to happen. But yeah, that's really good that you brought that up. Probably nobody else will. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I just saw that and read that, and it said partially fixed. So hey, look, I'm just trying to provide it as good information as possible.
No, that's good. Yeah,
and I think poking and prodding at at anything really, especially for people who are looking to invest money in things, I think it's important to try and just get as clear and as much answers as possible.
Yeah, the actual launching of a token is it's much more complicated than people think. And that's one that reason there, that point that they brought up. It's a typical point that they bring up with a lot of projects. So, but yeah, I think it's awesome that you pointed that out. I think it's cool.
Cool, man. Well, where can people find more about Texan Token? Where can they learn more about the Texas National Movement, and where can they learn more about you? And give us some details here.
Yeah. So here's the cool thing: we're partnering with them. All right. So their views aren't necessarily our views. Now, me on a personal level, apart from the project and apart from Texas, there's a lot of the same types of things that we share in common. Right. I feel that I relate very well to some of the things that they talk about. If you want to learn more about that, I would highly encourage you to do it. And here's why. There's, the Texas nationalist movement. To some people out there, that sounds really scary because they don't understand what it actually is. Go out there and educate yourself. If you go educate yourself and you look at it and you say, you know what, this is still freaking me out, I would encourage you not to participate in this token. It's not for you. And that's okay. That is 100% okay. So check them out, texitnow.org. That's a really good place to start. You can check out Daniel Miller. Crypto Heartbeat actually did an interview with Daniel Miller about 4 or 5 months ago, and he goes over a lot of the details. On the 4th of July, Crypto Heartbeat and I and Daniel Miller and the executive director, we talked on Crypto Heartbeat's channel. And then if you have any questions about Texan Token, you can go to texan.cc. Twitter is Texan_token. And then Telegram is t.me//Texan Token. And between those 3 places, or messaging me directly or Matt directly, you will certainly find the answers that you are seeking. So,
and real quick, when is the donation phase going to start?
I will say this, 2 weeks, man. 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks.
Cool.
No, I'm just
cool.
kidding. So we don't know yet. I will say that it is going to be very soon. And I'm not, very soon, folks. So be prepared, follow us, get the announcements as they come out.
Is there going to be a bonding curve with the donation phase?
Yeah, there is going to be a bonding curve, and we are actually going to do something a little bit different with that to benefit everybody. So I'm excited to actually talk about that too.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll have you back on the show, Brandon. Appreciate you coming on, and wish you the best of luck with everything.
Oh, look at this. Ready?
Yes.
Be good, buddy.
Love it. All right. Take care. Some really cool features coming out of Texas Token. What are my thoughts? Well, one of the first things I notice when I look into a project is if the team is doxed. And clearly, Brandon, he's giving his full name. I know he's been supporting and promoting the Hex community for a really long time. So that's green flag number 1 for me. Same thing with Crypto Heartbeat. He's been serving the Hex community for a long time. And so this is one of the first things that I look at when I look at potentially investing into a project. Now, the next thing I look at is obviously I look at the functionality of the project. If there's an audit, I read the audit, which I have done with Texan Token. And there was a few bugs in there that seem to have been fixed for the most part, with the exception of the one that Brandon didn't want to comment on, which is fine. That doesn't necessarily mean that the contract is bad or that the project is garbage. I mean, we're really nitpicking here. Several of the green flags to look out for. The code is immutable. That means you can't go back and change it once the code is there. It's got trustless yield with no counterparty risk. That means there's no middleman. You're just you and the contract. That's true DeFi. Okay, it's deflationary. It's a deflationary token. And just like Brandon and I were talking about, when the supply is scarce, that means the price goes up in conjunction with supply being scarce. Simple supply and demand economics. What Brandon was saying is that eventually the origin address that's holding these credit and debit tokens, there's only a fixed supply of those. That supply gets smaller and smaller over the course of time. That's pretty awesome game theory if you ask me, because the smaller and smaller that supply gets, the more and more stakers there are. That means there's going to be less supply and more demand. When there's less supply and more demand, that means price goes up. And on top of that, anybody who emergency end stakes their principal stake, 100% of those Texan tokens get burned. That's insane. So not only do you have awesome game theory going into this token, you also have a deflationary product. And then the cool thing is that you can scrape your interest. So that's kind of taking your risk off the table. This allows you to capitalize on bull runs and bear runs without necessarily having to unstake your principal. You can keep your principal staked for the 22 years and continuously scrape off the top. We know crypto's cyclical. So if there's a bull run, then you could take profits in that bull run and scrape your interest off the top that you've been earning. In my opinion, you want to have a profit-taking strategy, and this scraping mechanism allows you to have a consistent profit-taking strategy. On the flip side, when it goes to the bear market, right, maybe you don't want to scrape then because maybe you're not making as much yield, or maybe the token's not worth as much, right? So there's less incentive to scrape in the bear market. However, maybe you can then restake the profits that you took because you can buy more at the bottom than you can at the top. Another green flag that I look out for is an audited contract. Clearly, these guys are taking this seriously because it cost them $35,000 to do an audit on their code to make sure that it was sound. And they're open, they're transparent about their code. This will bring a positive impact to the Richard Heart ecosystem. In my opinion, I think it'll be complementary to what Richard Heart is creating. Richard Heart's creating the Pulse chain mainly so that us Hexicans can pay low gas fees. But with that comes a territory of building and creating on the Pulse chain. You can't expect the Pulse chain to perform price action wise without robust and thriving ecosystem. You need the NFT guys, you need the crypto gaming guys, you need the metaverse guys, you need all that. Richard Heart may not like those things, but they're essential because they bring a lot of users, a lot of liquidity, and a lot of developers into the space. You can't just have a dead chain. So the argument of it's not something that Richard Heart created, it's a little backwards. It's like a backhanded slap because Richard Heart is creating and forking and making this awesome product. What's the point of having the Pulse chain if you can't build on the ecosystem and there's not great projects on there? I believe the ethos of the Texan token is perfectly aligned with the ethos of crypto in general. The purpose of crypto is to take middlemen out. It's true sovereignty, the ability to pay peer-to-peer, and the ability to have privacy as well. That is the ethos of cryptocurrency. Texan token fits that ethos. Now, are there any downsides to this token? Well, sure, right? Maybe Brandon and Matt, I don't think they've ever created a cryptocurrency before, so they're a little new to the space. Sure, that's there. We don't know necessarily who the developers are. I didn't ask about the developers or if the developers are doxed. And if you're just a Richard Heart maxi and you don't want to invest anything that's not Richard Heart, sure, like there's always going to be that argument. There's always going to be maximalists. Additionally, to me, in my opinion, the fact that the Texan token, they're targeting an audience that no one's ever targeted before. The Texas nationalist movement, there's a lot of people that support that narrative and that project in the state of Texas and across the world that may not be exposed to cryptocurrency. So it's opening a bridge to those people to come into the Richard Heart ecosystem. And what better place than the Pulse chain, than a Richard Heart asset? If Texan token didn't do this, they didn't build this bridge, then those people may have never had the opportunity to come into the ecosystem. So to me, this is going to be a net positive. And if you can get wealthy in the process of that, hey, all the more power to you. Now, I don't think that all projects and assets on the Pulse chain are going to be good projects. But in my opinion, I think this will be a good one. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know for sure if this is going to be good or not, but for me and my money, I'm comfortable investing in a project like this. I'm not here to give you any financial advice. I'm just here to share the information with you. I'm just a guy connecting dots. And this is a dot that I've connected, and it makes sense to me. So take that for what it's worth. But that's a decision that you'll have to make for yourself. And of course, one other downside is maybe getting some clarification on the audit, page 13, the token distribution. You can go on their website and read it. They post it there. That may be one thing that I'm looking at and maybe have more questions on. I would just maybe like an explanation on what that means and what that is. And what I'll do is in my next video, I'll do a run through on Texan token. I'll show you how you can add it on the testnet to your MetaMask, how you can stake it. I've already staked a little bit on the testnet. I've played around with the token. It's pretty cool. They have some really cool charts and graphs, and I'll show you kind of a more analytical side, and it'll show you your ROI, how much return you'll make by staking for 22 years, etc., etc. So stay tuned for that video. I'll do a more deep dive into that. So that's it for me. I'm out. Stay savage.